Hi, Ramprakash. Thank you so much for joining in over today's session. And you can see the screen share feature right below. I hope you can see that, right? Yes, exactly. So just to give hello everyone for joining over today's session, and we have Mr. Ramprakash Ramamurthy, who's the director of AI research at ZOHO, who's going to be our speaker for the day. And Ramprakash Ramamurthy also leads the AI efforts for ZOHO Corp. He has also been an instrumental in setting up ZOHO's AI platform from scratch and comes up with a rich 8+ years of experience in building AI for the enterprise at ZOHO. The AI platform at ZOHO currently serves over 1 billion requests every day and is also growing strong. On this session, we can learn from ZOHO's AI research guru, whose product serves more than 1 billion requests every day. So yeah, the stage is yours.
Great. Thank you, Varshini. So I'm just seeing my screen here. So it's like talking to a wall for me. Just in case something goes wrong, please let me know.
Sure, please.
Yeah, great. So thank you all for coming. And thank you, SaaS Insider, for putting together an excellent event. I've been attending it from the morning and felt really good. And all thanks to tech, sitting at the comfort of homes, we are able to do this. But a live event would have been much better, but yeah, not complaining. Good to go. Right. So I'm Ramprakash, and like I said, like Varshini said, I've been leading the AI efforts for ZOHO Corp. So this talk is a compilation on the learnings we had when we tried to ship AI features into the enterprise. So a bit of a background, we started looking into AI as early as 2011. It wasn't really fancily called AI back then. It was called by many terms. It was called probabilistic programming. It was called statistical programming. It was the time when we had big data came into play, the whole idea of Hadoop, MapReduce. It was the time when the world was behind that. 2011, 2012, and so on. And then 2014, we started setting up a full-time research group. Again, research as in not very academic research, but research to solve immediate problems we have across our products. So like you'd have known, ZOHO Corp is a suite of products. We have a group of products, ZOHO, the operating system for business, Manage Engine, the IT division, and Web and MS, our IoT division. So the labs is a common group where we try to solve a lot of problems in these areas. So we have a group that is dedicatedly working on relational databases. We have a group that is working on hardware acceleration. The same way, we have a group that started off with ML and AI much before the hype came in. So we started, like 2014, we started our full-time efforts for ML. And it's only around 2015, the recurrent neural networks started becoming very famous. Natural language processing started to gain prominence. And here we are, one of the biggest hyped technologies today. Mistake is probably a big word. Mistakes to avoid is probably a big word. But I will be walking you through the lessons we learned from the mistakes we made during the process. So AI is here to stay. If you look a bit into the history of AI, AI has evolved since 1956, where a group of people in California started looking at AI. And then the problem with this technology has always been over-promising and under-delivering. Right? So we have seen a period of AI springs and then AI winters come where there is not much of funding going into it, not much of research happening. And then there is a renewed interest after, let's say, half a decade, 1 decade. And again, over-promise, under-deliver, over-promise, under-deliver. So we are still in the over-promise, under-deliver stage, but I don't see an AI winter coming anytime soon right now, because not only has our data collection capabilities and data processing capabilities increased, but we have built very successful business models around data. Right? So we don't pay for using our social network. We don't pay for using our search engine. It's a very very successful $1 trillion business model where a service is offered to you in exchange of your personal data. Right? So I don't see an AI winter coming anytime soon, and AI has slowly incubated in the personal space where all your B2C products had a lot of AI features, and then we started getting it via hardware, speakers, which are actually microphones, but smartly bundled and sold to us as speakers that listen to all our conversations and give us valid recommendations. That is a thing, and I hope all of us have one at our homes. So the same way, AI is also making inroads into the enterprise world. So I see enterprise always will come in with a late mover advantage. Think about it. 5 years back, we didn't have a lot of mobile apps where we got our jobs done. We didn't have a lot of enterprise mobile apps where we got our jobs done. But today, a lot of enterprise work happens just via mobile. Same way, the AI wave is coming into the enterprise, and now is a good time to be in the game. Right? So we'll get into the tech. So I have split my learnings into 3 categories: product learning, engineering learning, and the people learning. Engineering learning, of course, I'm not going in depth about a CNN versus RNN talk. Again, from a product management standpoint, the kind of engineering lessons we had, and finally the culture learning which we had with how to get people working along with our AI systems and building it. Right. So we'll start off with product learnings. So I have constantly believed in this. It's not always about AI. It's always about X plus AI. It's about how well you integrate AI into your existing products. So your product is going to be the main feature, and your AI features are just going to be add-ons to it that makes the life of the users that are using our product much easier. Think about it. When the database wave was catching up, probably there would have been a lot of events around databases. There would have been a huge hype cycle on how databases are going to help. But today, databases are a given in any software product you have. It can be a relational database. It can be a NoSQL database. It can be just a plain key value store. But any software product you use has some form of AI or some form of database in it. So I see the same thing happening today. AI ops is talked about, is hyped about a lot. So I would say I don't see AI ops becoming a thing, but I would see naturally DevOps getting a lot of AI into it. So it's always about the kind of product or the kind of feature that you deliver, and it's just a small bit about how AI can get into it. So AI is going to be talked a lot, and at a point of time they're going to talk less and less about it, like the way we talk about databases today. Right? So today you don't go sell a product, and just because it uses PGSQL, it's not going to be a unique product, right? The same thing is going to happen to AI, is what I foresee. So I think the point I'm trying to drive home is you make sure the way your AI integrates into your product is well settled. So there has been a new job agenda that has come in for product and engineering managers. So traditionally, an engineering manager, all he has to do is take care of code reusability, code extendability, modularity, how well it integrates with other modules, and so on. But there has been a new job role for these managerial roles. The fact is that they'll have to make sure what kind of data points their products are going to generate. Because at least in B2B world, we are not still looking at tons of data. I mean, if you go read about it, a lot of people talk about terabytes of data coming in, and the kind of data you have where you run your models for days. But the reality is in the fact that in enterprise software, you have very little amount of data, right? Very little amount of data. And again, there are a lot of compliances and regulations that wouldn't allow you to data to all the whims and fancies you like, right? So your business data is actually your customer's secret. You cannot go about using it in your models, and probably it can help his competitor do better. So the main role, the primary role for these new age product managers is going to be keeping a track on what kind of data points their product is going to generate. What is the life cycle of the data? How well is it used? And how well is AI being applied on top of it? Right? So we have heard about data as the new oil and all other statements. But the kind of data points that your product generates, for example, when we started off, we were all excited about the math. Then we found libraries, we had the math implemented, and then we didn't have data points. So from a central research team, we reached out to the product teams, and interestingly, data points that we needed weren't logged, right? Or if I can call it fancily, weren't orchestrated. So we had to ask them to orchestrate. Again, that code has to be shipped, and then you'll have to wait for some time for the data to be collected. And apparently after 3-4 weeks, you get the data and you find that your algorithm is no good for that data, right? So when you're getting started, especially when you're trying to retrofit AI into products that have existed over years, you will have to make sure your data point is generating the right, your product is generating the right set of data points, right? It can be as simple as a date format. If you maintain a consistent date format across your features, across developers, right? So it becomes very analytics friendly, where you take that and you can run your queries on top of it. But when you have different date formats, you'll have to, do your ETL stuff on it, and it becomes very complex. So that is one learning we had. And in general, when we are trying to selling it to customers, there has been a very probabilistic shift as far as AI is concerned, both from building it and when using it. Now, think about it. Any programmer who brute forces is a bad programmer, right? But somebody who's working on deep learning, you cannot really blame he or she for brute forcing, because that's how deep learning works. You just randomly check out parameters and try different activation functions. The best way is to brute force, right? So there has been a probabilistic angle even when customers use it. Let me quote an example. So we have our network monitoring solution in Manage Engine, where let's say we are trying to, let us look at before AI and after AI. So before AI, there used to be a standard operating procedure. Whenever an outage is identified, you can create workflows on top of it, where you talk to the, you send a notification to the marketing team to put out on social media that you are facing issues with your site or app. And then you report to the CEO since there is an outage. And then you report to the network team, you report to the product team, and so on. So all of them get into the, get their hands wet and try going about fixing it. Now, with AI-based outage prediction coming in, it can tell you there is a 60% chance of outage in the next 1 hour, right? For a 60% chance of outage, you probably need not notify your customers. You probably need not notify your CEO. And if this model is causation ready, or if this model is explanation friendly, it can also tell you why an outage is expected. So it's probably because of a network outage. It's probably because of a latest build that you pushed by your product engineering team, right? So you can just identify the right set of people, and you can just notify them to come in and fix things. So you see that there is a 60% chance. Now, when there is an 80% chance, things get even more difficult. You probably don't have to notify your customers, but on social media, but just let them know on email. And 100% chance you'll have to do the full thing. Now, there is an AI prediction, and there is a workflow that has been built around it, right? So that is where the probabilistic shift is coming. All workflows have to be redesigned to accommodate the probability that your AI engine is going to shift, right? And like I said, explanations are going to be the key. The last example we talked about, where the outage prediction engine is also going to tell why that outage is going to come, because that decision is going to be acted upon by a group of people, that is a team or a group of teams, right? So for example, when my social network is recommending me a friend, I'm the only person who is going to decide if I'm going to accept or decline the friend request. But in an enterprise software, there's going to be a team that's going to act on that decision which AI made, right? So interestingly, when we first launched our AI feature, so we launched it somewhere in 2015, we were waiting for customer feedback, just refreshing the mailboxes. But apparently 7 days, 15 days, there's no particular email that came in. And finally, on the 16th day, somebody wrote to us asking, hey, how do I turn this feature off? Right? So that user has been using the network monitoring suite for ages, right? He has been using it for 7-8 years. He knows the in and out of his network. The model which we deployed was only it probably got in a lot of false positives, right? So he was pretty annoyed and he wanted to turn it off. So this is where we considered working strongly on explanations. Today, most of ZOHO Corp's AI suite features come up with explanations along with predictions. After introducing explanations, we found that our usage went up by around 67 to 70%. And that is a big number because, see, we spend a lot on this AI features. The GPU is expensive. The model training takes a lot of time. And it is very difficult to convince the users to come in and use the features. So explanations really helped. And so we kind of build all our AI features along with explanations. Human in the loop is also good. Generally, full automation is still not in the expectation, is still not up to the mark. General AI, I don't think general AI is coming anytime soon. AGI, artificial general AI, where you give it any problem, it can solve it. Today we are looking at narrow AI, where a ham spam identifier can only do a ham spam identifier, or even put together a ham spam engine in email is much different from a ham spam engine in a support ticket machine, right? So human in the loop is good. It's always a good idea to factor humans in your AI process, not go about complete digitalization or complete AI features coming in. Now think about it. You still don't have self-driving cars, but you have driver assist. So the same way, most enterprise software is going to help humans do a good job, but not going to replace them, right? So for example, at the start of this pandemic, we heard a lot of stories about AI-powered software tools trying to shut down access to legal customers on a supermarket website, right? So people were actually trying to hoard things, like all of us or most of us did. But apparently, the model looked at it as a DDoS attack because a pandemic was never modeled into the training data, right? So bringing a human in the loop can give you superpower. It can make superhuman capabilities with a combination of both AI and human. And of course, bias, even in enterprise software, avoiding bias by virtue of your training data is very important. So your product management team has to make sure that bias is avoided and no racial or gender discriminations happen. Even in something like a service desk ticketing, you'll have to make sure your algorithms are bias-free. And let us quickly hop into the engineering learnings we had. The first thing is the choice of framework. So generally, a lot of people ask, is it okay to go with the latest thing in the market? But I would say stick to what your company is. So for example, when we started off in 2015, we were just two people, right? And back then, neural networks came in via something called Lua, right? So Lua is the language, and there was a framework called Torch. So the same thing is called PyTorch. After Facebook came in, they ported it to Python. And so in emerging technologies like these, things constantly change. So all of a sudden, you would want to go with a new TensorFlow or a new PyTorch or any such variant of implementations that have been launched. But it's a good idea to start with frameworks that coexist with your existing tool. For example, ZOHO is primarily a JVM-based company, right? So now, had we gone for something like Lua back then we had to take care of storage, we had to take care of firewalls, we had to take care of security. And with just a 2-member team, it is difficult to do all that, and we wouldn't have time to do AI, right? So we just went with JVM-based tools. Yes, the tools evolved slowly, but apparently we had a lot of things. We had Apache Mahout back then, and then we had Apache Spark. Even today, most of our production AI runs on top of Apache Spark. Right, so this is something I keep insisting on all places. Correlation is not causation. Correlation is basically telling whenever the sun rises, the rooster crows, right? But you cannot tell what is causating what. Is the rooster crowing because the sun has risen, or has the sun risen because the rooster is crowing, right? But in this case, we know what is causating what. Now think about the same network monitoring solution where you have like 50 different cases that can lead to an outage, 50 different variables that can go wrong. And you cannot just correlate with it. You will probably have to causate cause. So causation is going to be very important. If you're starting off with AI, make sure your AI is explanation ready. Your AI is also working towards causal models, but most neural networks and stuff are built around correlation. But there are a lot of people doing research on the causation area, and I see this as a major trend that would come up in the next 2 years, where a lot of causal AI is going to come in. Now, concept drift again might sound like a very fancy term, but it's actually very simple. You have built a model, you have trained it, you have deployed it to your product, and let's say your SaaS product is being used across geographies, and concept drift brings in the idea that your model was trained in a state of tune, right? And then it went inside to production, and at some point it has to be retrained. And most of the times, these retrainings can be really costly, especially when you're dealing with something like neural networks. Your retraining has to be costly. So you need not retrain like on a periodic way. If things don't change, you needn't retrain. But if things consistently change, right? So for example, let's say you are a phone manufacturer and you launched a new phone, right? And this is the first phone you launched with the camera facility. Right now, all of a sudden, there is a whole new, and you have a support desk. All of a sudden, there is a whole new idea of a camera module that is coming in, and it has to be tagged on the tickets that come in via your support desk. Now, unless and until, let's say you are the help desk provider to that phone company, unless and until that company is reporting to you saying, hey, I have launched a new module, then you'll have to retrain. That's going to be a long, complicated process. Nobody is going to use your AI feature if you go with that. So your models have to be monitored. They will have to identify themselves when a concept drift has occurred. So probably it would just scan the incoming variables, and whenever it finds that there is a shift in the incoming variables over the model in which it was trained, right? Whenever your model identifies that, you can actually go and mitigate that. So there are a lot of techniques to do that, but this is one of the primary learnings we had. Again, data is code. Right? We've heard that data is oil, but data is code. Treat data like the way you treat code. Most of us have Git repositories for code, but not many of us have data repositories. Not many of us version our data. Not many of us benchmark our data and do a milestone on it when your data is launched into a model. Right? So make sure you treat your data like code, be it access control, be it versioning, be it cloning and reusing. Make sure you use, there are a lot of tools that are coming up. We have our own internal tools for that, but make sure you treat data like your code. And of course, you'll have to plumb your data pipelines properly. So AI is something that works on a huge amount of data. So data in silos might not really help its case. So it needs to have a bird's eye view of all your data points. So you'll have to make sure you, given to compliances, you have your compliances right. At the same time, your AI model works very well. So it needs a very high level view. It erodes data boundaries and looks at data from a very high level for it to make better predictions. So the last part, the culture or the people learning which we had. Again, for us, as far as culture is concerned, each of us are different. So I would say, just take this with a pinch of salt, try this and see what works for you. So for example, we did a lot of hiring, and most of the times we hired engineers and gave them time to learn about data science and become an AI engineer. That transition was easy, right? Because anyway, data science is still programmers stuff. So we didn't really, or maybe it was too early. We didn't have much of data scientists in the market, but it was easy teaching data science to engineers than teaching engineer coding and programming to data scientists. So we just hired engineers and went about it. That is our story. And again, centralized versus decentralized AI team. So the solution which we use is a hybrid model where we have a centralized team and then we have decentralized teams in the products. So I think that model is widely used. A lot of people use it. But look at what your mileage is. Decentralized AI teams have a better grip on the product and the local use cases there. Centralized AI teams follow up the community because it is constantly changing. So every morning you wake up, something would have happened, right? So there's a lot of fear of missing out, especially in AI. But since we talked about AI plus X, X plus AI and all that, a hybrid model would really help. And of course, compliance is going to be a big thing. We have GDPR and California Privacy Act and a lot of things like that. But interestingly, the GDPR, for example, the GDPR does not have any mention of artificial intelligence in it, right? So, but I soon see a wave of compliance features and laws that are going to be written for AI-specific tools. So explanation is one thing. Let's say you're a bank and you reject a person's loan application via an AI tool, right? You're going to explain why you rejected him. So we see a lot of compliance coming in. Again, data privacy is at its prime now. There's been a lot of awareness around it. So make sure you build AI that is compliance ready and takes your users' privacy seriously. So that is it about from me, and maybe I think I have 4 minutes. We'll take some questions.
So yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can always drop it out in the messages. And I have a particular question that I wanted to ask you is what is like, so AI right now has got super popular, like everywhere around. It was like, if I ask a fresher, what is something that you would like to do? Being a graduate from computer science, everyone's like, I would like to do a master's in data science, AI, everything has become super popular. But back at 2012, 2013, AI was not something that anyone would have thought of, but ZOHO did and you did. So what was the inspiration or a small vision that clicked in that moment that you thought, okay, why not this? Or how did this entire thought process come in?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, in 2011, I joined ZOHO I joined ZOHO straight out of college. And like the way we have AI today, we had Android app development, iOS app development. So I told my boss, I'll come in and I wanted to get started with Android programming. And he said, okay, you first do this and probably let us see that. And it's been 9 years now. I still haven't gone to Android. But the thing is that the idea of big data was catching up. So the whole idea was where you move your, you don't move your data to the processor. Instead, you move your processor to your data. And when things like MapReduce came in, there were a lot of things like sentiment analysis. In fact, sentiment analysis was the first thing we worked upon. Identifying, because ZOHO has a lot of help desk products. There's a customer desk, there's a IT help desk, and so on. So, and then there was purely lack of data. We just had to use Amazon's customer review data set to review B2B emails, and that didn't work. So then we had to do annotation. We had to, create training models and all that. But again, there was this constant doubt of, would this really fit enterprise? Would this really fit what we are doing? And it took 3-4 years of going back and forth, trying out different things. In fact, we tried a model where it would try to authenticate you by the way you type on the keyboard. Right? We thought it will become a big thing, but apparently it did not. So we did a lot of things in parallel. Certain things clicked, and again, in the last 2 years, our notion has to be to make sure people use it, because even today, a lot of people claim AI features. It is a tick mark, checkbox for you when you buy your SaaS software, but are you using it on a daily basis? No. So that is
because I also find it in ways when you talk to customers, they have a lot of requests on AI, but some things seem, it does make sense, but it's a lot of question mark to it. I understand. Yeah, they like it custom made. So yes. Right. So there's another question from Shrikant. Correct. While I believe AI superpowers, are users apprehensive on deployment of AI within products today? Do they really care whether it has AI? So it is a question.
Okay. So I would take this as a two-pronged question. So the first thing, are users apprehensive? Yes. Because whenever we talk to them about AI, their question is, will this take my job?
Yeah.
Right? Let's say you're selling a test product, you're telling a health test product. And the first thing they come, is this going to replace me? Right? Because that is the media hype we have seen. The same thing when we talk about blockchain, people talk about, am I losing my privacy here? Because all of it is public. So there is this preconceived notion which we'll have to address, and we'll have to make sure how their data is trained. So we make sure their data is trained only for their model and we don't use it for the benefit of others, and so on. So that is the first education we'll have to make on it. And the second thing, do they really care whether it has AI? I don't think they really care. It is the same thing, like I said, it's about databases. Right? Do we really care if this particular Hopin app uses PGSQL or MySQL at the backend? No, we don't care. The same way, is it a complicated if-else statement or is it using AI? Nobody really cares. Right? But you just have to make it work screaming AI at the top, but if it works, for example, the first product that got us a lot of appreciation was an icon recommender. Of the all things we did, an icon recommender was the most used AI feature which we did. So there was somebody who threw in a lot of praises, and this had happened. He had, so basically when you name a form, it's a low code development tool. When you name a form, you would recommend an icon. So he had named a form called California Leads, and we had showed him the Golden Gate Bridge icon, right? And we were all surprised. In fact, we had never seen the tool doing it when we tested it. We have never tested for this case. We used to test hospital patients. Is it giving me the doctor sign? Yes. So that were the cases we checked, but this was surprising. So users really don't care. As long as it works, it's good.
Yeah. So I think we're up for time as well. And thank you so much, Ramprakash. It was so much of insight on AI for me as well as for the attendees. Thank you so much for giving us your time and having the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashni.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Thank you.